Hi everybody, thanks for joining us at Franklin Park Zoo for another Facebook Live. My name is Amy and today I have with me one of our animal ambassadors. I have Lando, our red-footed tortoise, so I'm going to hold up a little closer so you can see him. He is one of our oldest animal ambassadors, so we're not sure exactly how old he is, but he's been here with us at the zoo for almost 40 years. He was donated to us back in 1982, so he's been with us for quite a long time. And you can kind of see how he's kind of kicking a little bit. He is ready to go. So I am going to put him down on the ground so he can get moving. He does really enjoy coming outside, having the chance to walk around. And I did bring a couple things with me this afternoon that are some of his favorite things that he does really enjoy. Kind of give him a minute. He's coming up nice and close so you can get a good view of him. I did mention he is a red-footed tortoise, so they do get that name because they do have these nice red and kind of yellow spots on his face and on his front arms. So that is why they're called red-footed tortoise. And he is on the move. So a lot of people think tortoises are pretty slow, but he can actually move pretty quick. We're probably going to see him walk around quite a bit. He usually loves to come out and get his exercise in and explore everything around. He is very curious, and you might see him as he's coming over. I actually have one of his enrichment items that we set up, and that might be a word you may or may not be familiar with. If you've watched some of our Facebook Lives before, you've probably heard that. But enrichment items are things that we use to enrich the lives of our animals. So what I have right here, I have a little handheld version in my hand. It is his scratcher. So one of the things that Molasses does really enjoy is having the back of his shell scratched. Sometimes he gets really into it, other times he's a little bit less, so I'm going to give it a try and see if he's into it right now. So, he's giving us... So we can tell when he's into it because you can kind of see he's doing that little booty shake and kind of rubbing back up into it a little bit as I'm brushing him. So, and this is something we actually like to bring his scratcher out during programs so that guests can have a chance to interact with him. It is something he does enjoy. One of the things that might be surprising to you is that he actually does have feeling in his shell. A lot of people think of this just like, oh, big, rock hard, he can't feel anything through there. But his spine actually does run, and it's fused right into the back of his shell along with his lungs. So everything's kind of right up on the side. So you can kind of feel it. It's kind of like if you're wearing a big winter coat, you can kind of feel it if somebody runs their hand along your back. I actually do have a nice little one of our biofacts with us. This is not a red-footed tortoiseshell. This is a yellow-footed tortoiseshell, which is a close relative of them. But you can kind of see how I mentioned that spine is fused right into the back. So that's what the inside of their shell looks like. So they're not an animal that can leave their shell. They're born with really teeny tiny shells and they grow right with them. So unlike a hermit crab that might leave and find a bigger shell, they kind of grow with their shell as they're going. So, and obviously that is missing kind of the bottom underside of his shell. So, and he's taking a nice walk around. He doesn't seem interested in his other variation that I have, which I'll grab as you guys are following him. So I showed you the little scratcher that we have that we can bring out for guests. He actually does have his own personal scratcher as well. We actually got the inspiration to make this because we already knew he really liked to have the back of his shell scratched, and we brought him out for a little sun and exercise one day, and he found a nice low-hanging bush that had some nice low branches, and he just crawled underneath the branch and just started scratching up on one of the bottom ones, so he could do that all on his own. So we wanted to try and find a way to kind of recreate that for him that he can use inside in his exhibit. We bring this out for him a lot in the mornings when we're cleaning so he can kind of walk through. And it is just that nice kind of arch that we have with just a brush on the underside so he can walk right through and kind of scrub up on it all on his own. And he will actually kind of do laps sometimes. So we usually go through, give a little scratch, get a couple wiggles, and then he'll kind of go walk a little bit, and then he'll usually come back around a second time. It doesn't look like he's super interested in this afternoon, but I am going to give our lovely social media team a video of him using it, so hopefully you'll get the chance to check back at our Facebook page and some of our other media, and you can get a chance to see him using that as he is kind of walking around getting his enclosure cleaned in the morning. And all right, do we have any questions that are popping up as they're coming through, or shall I keep jumping in and talking about them?
You can encourage folks to answer questions and maybe tell us a little bit more about the species.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you folks do have any questions, feel free to throw them in, and we're happy to answer them as they go. But I will just talk more about red-footed tortoises. I'm actually going to turn him around the other way towards the grass a little bit, redirect him. So these are tortoises that are found living in Central and South America, and they're found in a pretty wide variety of habitats. You can find them in dry brushland, kind of thicker forested areas, really anywhere that's not super muddy where they can't get around too much or dig their eggs down pretty low during breeding season. But they do seem to really like that forested, kind of rainy areas a little bit. They do like that nice humid environment. And these guys are technically omnivores, but they do primarily eat plant material. So in the wild, their primary diets are going to be all kinds of different fruits, foliage that they go by, but they will also, on occasion, if they come across it, eat some insects or even carrion that's kind of down on the side. So it's a little opportunistic, but they'll go for it. But primarily what they're going to be eating is going to be fruit and other green leafy material. Lando here does love it whenever we get him some nice fresh fruits. He does love the different kind of berries that we get him around the zoo. He is a big fan. During Halloween, during October, when we tend to have a lot of nice pumpkins around, we have been able to give him pumpkin, which he loves. He's also gotten some watermelon this summer, which he's really enjoyed as well. They are really attracted to those nice bright colors, so helps make them in the wild really great for finding that fruit that can kind of be hidden down in the grasses if they know how to look for, well adapted to finding those bright colors. And they do have a pretty good sense of smell to kind of help them track those down.
Alexandra had a question. She wants to know how old they can get to be.
So tortoises are very well known for living a very long time. So life expectancy for these guys is, we don't have an exact age, but on average they can usually live up to 50 years old. So usually for even longer. They are a very long-lived species. So I did mention we don't know exactly how old it is. We know Lando here is at least 40 years old, but he is healthy and doing great. He does get regular vet checkups here at the zoo, and he gets a nice healthy diet every single day. So hopefully we're going to have him with us for a very long time. So you might see how his eyes are a little bit watery, so he does just have some little watery eyes. So, and you probably can't hear it as well right now, but he also is a little wheezy when he talks a little bit, so you can kind of see his throat moving a little bit as he's kind of breathing. But overall, these guys usually aren't very vocal. They're usually pretty quiet. The one exception, males can be a little bit vocal during breeding seasons. They actually will make kind of a chicken clucking sound to communicate to other females and to kind of warn other males away, and be a little competitive. So if they're competing over a female, the males will also try and knock each other over and just tip each other over, which is how they'll kind of compete. So the loser will be flipped over, and the male that's victorious is able to be with the female.
Do they have any natural predators?
So for the most part, these guys are very well protected by this shell. He can pull his arms and his head and his legs, all those nice vulnerable parts in, so he's very well protected. So usually as adults, the biggest threat that they're actually usually face in the wild are humans. They are very slow moving. He's not very fast. He can move maybe faster than he thought a tortoise would. But they are a very popular species for local pet trades, and their meat is considered delicacy in their local habitat ranges. So that is a threat they face, but for kind of the natural predators, any cats or anything, usually they're not in too much of a threat once they hit the adult stage. So usually they're most vulnerable as eggs and as hatchlings when they're first born. So when they're really small and that shell isn't quite as thick and strong as when they get older. So, and they do, mom usually does lay pretty big clutches of 5 to up to 30 eggs, so there can be a lot of eggs, so most of those aren't going to survive to adulthood. So she has a lot of eggs in hopes that a couple of them are going to make it. So it's a lot like the sea turtles that we might see kind of in our area. You go for the big numbers. And you kind of see him, he is going to the bathroom right now, which is kind of what you see him doing with his tail as he's kind of walking through. So, and he is very curious. You can see how he's just kind of taking a look at everything. He is always very curious. Whenever we put anything down in his enclosure, he does really like to come take a look at it. And one of the really neat things that you might be surprised to learn, we actually do some training with him. So most of the animals here at the zoo are part of a training program. So he doesn't know as much as some of as many behaviors as, say, our big cats might, but he is trained to do one of our very basic behaviors. I didn't bring it with me, but he is trained to touch a target pole. So we have a nice long pole with a little ball on the end. He is trained to touch that ball with the tip of his nose. And usually as soon as we bring it out, he'll come right over, and he's always very excited for a chance to have some snacks. One of the favorite items that we like to give him for enrichment for training are grapes. He is a huge grapes fan. So he picked up a little ant there.
We're good. If you want.
All right. Yeah, if there are any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and I can answer them right now, or we can come through and happily answer some afterwards for you folks. But thank you so much for joining us today.